Hello, everybody. Thank you again for joining us tonight for the Change Management Meetup. I am super jazzed to have so many people tune in. So thank you again. It's so great to see so many new faces and see the group grow each time. I know things are a little bit challenging right now with remote work and joining things remotely. So I hope everyone's staying healthy and safe. But I really appreciate you spending an hour and a half with us tonight. So like Miranda said, today I'll be talking about the importance of change management during an Agile transformation. So some of the most common reasons that Agile transformations don't reach their full potential are directly related to change management. So yet we don't hear much about change management in tandem with Agile transformation when it's discussed and applied to an organization. So I'll be diving into kind of how to manage the people side of change during a technical Agile transformation. So just to give you guys a quick background on myself, I was born in Washington, D.C., so I'm a DMV native, lived here for all my life. I went to Virginia Tech, and then I've had about 8 years of experience working in Agile teams in both public and private sectors. I've worked in as a government contractor for several different agencies, and also on the private side for several years as well. I've held roles as a business analyst, as a quality assurance engineer, as a scrum master, and of course as a change management analyst. And I've been with Excella for about a little over 2 years at this point. My first contract was with the Department of Homeland Security, and now I'm currently with the Department of Health and Human Services at the Office of the Inspector General. Just so you guys can get to know me a little bit more, I currently live in the Brookland neighborhood of Northeast Washington, D.C. My husband and I just moved here. We just bought a house in July, so we moved here a couple months ago. We're still kind of getting things moved in and getting the house situated. We live here with our cute little cat, who you guys may have seen walking around behind me earlier. And some of my hobbies, when I'm not working, I like to do yoga. I like to experiment in the kitchen with some plant-based cooking, and I'm a huge 1980s hair metal and rock and roll fan. So once COVID is over, I'm excited to get back to some of those concerts. So here's my husband and me on our honeymoon last year. And then this is Harley, who really likes to assist me with work on a daily basis. She's always getting into things there. All right, so we'll start with a review of change management. We're all here because we're either interested in change management or practice change management, so I'll keep it short. But the definition of change management is the processes, tools, and techniques to manage the people side of change to achieve the required business outcome. And change management incorporates the organizational tools that can be utilized to help individuals make successful personal transitions, resulting in the adoption and realization of change. So in order to determine when change management is necessary, we must ask ourselves, does the change effort require people to do things differently? So if the answer to this question is yes, then the value of the change delivery will be tied directly to how the people involved adopt and embrace the change. All right, so a very brief overview of Agile. I know we have some Agilists on the call, so this is really just going to scrape the surface, but the manifesto for Agile software development identifies the following values, which are individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, and responding to change over following a plan. So if we take a closer look at these, 3 of those 4 values on the left are directly rooted in the people side of change and requiring people to do things differently. So just goes to show that Agile transformation really won't be successful unless you address the change management portion. So a brief overview of what is Agile transformation. So Agile transformation is the act of transforming an organization's form or nature gradually to one that is able to embrace and thrive in a flexible, collaborative, self-organizing, fast-changing environment. So really introducing a new Agile is a new approach to responding to changes. So iterative development, adjusting the sales based on changing requirements is in and of itself a change. So to be successful in applying Agile, organizations must effectively manage the introduction of Agile. So in searching for a cartoon for this slide, I really uncovered just how many Dilbert cartoons there specifically are about Agile software development, which is really astonishing. There's rows and rows and rows. I highly recommend a quick Google search, but this one I liked the best because it illustrates specifically what not to do. So change management meets Agile transformation. There are two dimensions of change management related to Agile development. There's change management in Agile processes and change management when you're moving from waterfall to Agile. So when the people side of change to Agile is effectively managed, it's been found that there are fewer obstacles and greater success managing the people side of change within Agile initiatives. And then on the flip side, when the move to Agile was managed poorly, there was a greater level of resistance to Agile overall, and more obstacles are encountered when attempting to integrate change management within certain Agile projects. So for today, I'm going to focus on the latter, which is change management when moving from waterfall to Agile, or in other words, the Agile transformation. Okay, so the most common reasons that Agile transformations fail, like I mentioned before, are directly related to change management. And some of these reasons can look like limited experience and lack of awareness of what Agile techniques are and why the organization is making the move toward adopting them. Insufficient training or lack of training, period. If your employees don't know what Agile is or what the principles are, it's not going to be successful. No buy-in, no employee buy-in to the change, which can be directly attributed to not identifying and communicating the WIFM, or the what's in it for me, and then little to no management support, or a leader who's not active and visibly backing the Agile transformation is the first key ingredient to a failed Agile transformation. And then ultimately, ingrained company culture that's rooted in waterfall that clashes with Agile values and principles is a big reason why a transformation will fail if we can't get people to kind of change their mindset around that. So before beginning an Agile transformation, your people have to be made aware and also become motivated to shift their mindset to Agile. So inspiring employees to buy into the transition requires leadership and identifying the WIFM. Again, what's in it for me? So in a study conducted by ProSci, it was found that the ability to deliver a higher quality product to the client at a much faster speed was an attractive benefit and a direct motivator for employees to adopt Agile. And then additionally, client satisfaction and the reference for needing a development process that supported addressing changing client needs was highly motivating. Usually clients want to, and I'm sure everyone can relate to this, but usually clients want to be able to check in throughout the project, verify their requirements are being met, and they want to kind of be involved before being presented with just the final product. And then having clients more involved in that development process also ensures that there are fewer repeats and do-overs in the development timeline, which ultimately reduces the amount of work and saves time for the team. And then additionally, the optimization of efficiency and flexibility, which really is a core value of Agile, was a huge motivation to transition to Agile based on the inherent optimizing benefits of the Agile development process. So really these things need to be communicated clearly and effectively to the people who are going to be adopting the change. So successful Agile transformation requires significant changes in how an organization works at its core, which requires altering the way people do their work every day. So engaging employees early and often ensures that they're fully involved in the transition and not just being told what to do. I think everyone can relate to this as well. Nobody really likes to be bossed around and told what to do without a reason why. So the biggest and most important factor in a successful Agile transformation is having an active and visible sponsor who is enthusiastic and 100% committed to the transition. So if the sponsor does not exhibit credibility and belief behind the Agile principles themselves, there will inevitably be some sort of a trickle-down effect on the entire organization. So effective communication early and often is another very important element. We all know this, but communication should be timely. It should be transparent. Obviously not every single piece of communication can be completely transparent, but it should be as transparent as possible with your entire organization as much as you can. And then it should be easily digestible, distributed in the correct channels, which are not always the same for every person receiving the message. So email is an obvious one, but there are other ways to communicate with employees, whether it's through Slack, through Teams, through Google Chat, through meetings, through one-on-ones. It can look a lot different depending on who you're trying to get that message across to. And then also, we don't want it to be too overbearing, and we don't want to oversaturate the audience. So there really is a fine line there to walk. It's also really important for the sender of the message to be credible and trustworthy. So your sponsor and your leader should be someone that people believe in and trust. Training on Agile principles is also critical to success to provide guidance and, if possible, formal certification for employees. Having formal training in Agile principles ensures that every person involved in the change is operating under the same idea and approach to what Agile is. So, it kind of sets that benchmark. And in addition to providing training for your employees, you're showing that you're investing in them and that you value their growth, which makes it more likely that they're inclined to adopt the new approach and show that you're really investing in their personal success. And then lastly, bringing in experts in Agile, such as an Agile coach or coaches, Scrum Masters, someone who's available to help translate and demonstrate complex Agile principles during the transition will aid in communicating the approach's credibility. And that also adds another layer to sponsorship credibility, because that shows that your sponsor is investing in somebody, bringing in somebody who really knows the core of what Agile means. So the greatest obstacles to a successful Agile transformation are really rooted in the natural human response to change, which is resistance. So expecting resistance to change and planning for it from the start of your Agile transformation will allow for more effective objection management when it inevitably occurs. So the main obstacles to success are resistance to the Agile approach altogether and not seeing value in adopting it. So some people will view the transition to Agile to be too monstrous of a task and requiring too much time and too many resources to implement. So if something seems too insurmountable, they won't adopt it. And then another one is maintenance of the status quo and the traditional waterfall approaches that they've been employing. So often people have deep-seated mindsets and can find it really hard to navigate away from comfortable traditional waterfall approaches that may have worked in the past. So if they are seeing the way that things have always been done and they don't see a problem with it, or they don't see why Agile is better, they're not going to want to budge. So the way, why am I going to change from something that's already working? Lack of strong executive sponsors, we've covered this already, but if they're not coached properly, sponsors who don't lead by example and who don't demonstrate adoption of the change to Agile themselves will completely undermine the Agile transition. And then ultimately, this goes back to the natural resistance to change, but the fear of failure. So resistance is rooted in fear. In the worst case scenario, fear of not being successful or viewing failure as inevitable because of the enormity of the transition goal can cause employees just to resist altogether and not even give it a try. So there are many elements to a successful Agile transformation, but some of these are just non-negotiable. And if they're not there, then there's a pretty good chance that we're not going to be successful in our transition. So having an expert in Agile present during the Agile transformation is critical to the successful transition. So being able to rely on an Agile coach creates a safety net for the transition, as issues or questions will inevitably arise among team members. And then this person or persons could be, it could be an external consultant, it can be someone who already works at the organization, or it can be an internal subject matter expert. It really doesn't matter where that expertise comes from as long as it's there. And then some critical team skills that are necessary for success are collaboration and teamwork, with an emphasis on transparency and feedback loops, and then an investment in training employees on Agile principles upfront. So, if you have a team who is not who has low morale, who is not, not a team player, a team that isn't really working together, is going to be a lot more challenging. Upfront advocacy and confidence from leadership creates the necessary trust in the Agile framework that contributes to the transition success. Again, we've been over that, of course, as well. And then also really important here is giving employees the space and the permission to be comfortable with ambiguity and adaptability. So as they transition, having that will allow them to feel a little bit more at ease if they know that they don't have to get it perfect the first time. Being able to make mistakes and learn from mistakes will ultimately underscore the Agile transformation success, because that is really what Agile is all about, is learning and working iteratively. So that'll underscore it quite a bit if people know that, okay, if we don't get this right the first time, that's okay. And then people, they need to feel comfortable with not knowing enough and still doing it without knowing enough, and deploying good enough products that can then be turned around and iterated upon to be improved. And then ultimately, if employees aren't empowered to adopt the Agile culture and mindset, the harder the transition will be. So the sooner employees embrace that mindset, the easier it'll become. So back to resistance to change. Some resistance to Agile transformation is inevitable. Humans naturally resist and question any change that really wasn't their own idea. So the key to a successful Agile transformation is minimizing that inevitable resistance. So in that same study that ProSci conducted, it came out in 2017, and they interviewed hundreds of change management professionals, and it was discovered that 87% of participants reported experiencing resistance when managing the transition to Agile, and 60% of that 87 classified that resistance as moderate to severe. So this just goes to show that we can't avoid resistance, we just must learn to manage it. So let's talk about why resistance occurs. Humans are hardwired to resist change. It's a natural physiological response. The part of the brain called the amygdala interprets changes as a threat to the body and releases the hormone for fear, which triggers that fight or flight response. Now, obviously, a transition to Agile is not life-threatening, but we still get that fight or flight reaction. So understanding the true nature of resistance to change will help organizations kind of mitigate these natural reactions. So what employees usually resist is not actually the Agile transformation itself, but rather they're resisting those social and human changes that will have to occur within them as a result of that technical change. So there are many different reasons why this resistance occurs. They vary from person to person. They can cause anxiety and fear, fear of the impact or perceived impact on their work. So people will really only take active steps towards the unknown if they genuinely believe and feel that the risks of not changing are greater than those of moving forward in a new direction. And that kind of goes back to people feeling comfortable in the old way. So, you know, it was working for us before. Why do we have to change? You really have to communicate why doing this is going to ultimately make them better off in the end. There's a misunderstanding about the need for change, which ultimately stems again from poor communication. So if employees don't understand the need for change, they're not going to be motivated to take steps towards implementing it. Lack of trustworthiness of people communicating the change. So if employees don't believe that management is capable of effectively managing the Agile transformation, or if they don't trust the people leading the change, they are likely to resist even giving it a shot. And then not being consulted about the change will definitely cause resistance. If employees are encouraged to be part of the transition, and if they're involved early on, they're more likely to know what's going on, why it's necessary, how their jobs are going to be affected. And when people are informed and feel like management really truly values their opinions and their thoughts and their fears, they tend to have higher levels of job satisfaction, deeper trust in the organization as a whole, and be a little bit less resistant to an organizational change like this. And then again, we've been over this before, but connection to the old way. Like we talked about, people are hardwired to resist change. The old way is comfortable, and if they believe they'll be worse off after the transition, they are definitely likely to resist it. And then if the organization has not handled change well in the past, it kind of leaves a bad taste in people's mouths, and the employees may be unlikely to get on board with an Agile transformation due to skepticism that it will actually work. So now we know why resistance occurs. So what does it look like? Resistance to organizational change can take a lot of different forms. People have different personality types. It may not be quite as easy to recognize. Sometimes it's obvious, such as blatant opposition to a transition, and other times resistance is masked as something else, such as an increase in sick leave or just a change in disposition. If somebody usually comes to work and they are always smiling and telling jokes and have a sunny disposition, and then all of a sudden they kind of just seem a little bit checked out or unhappy, that can be an indication. So another few examples of identifying resistance to the transformation could be emotion. If people exhibit visible signs of fear, loss, sadness, anxiety, all of those different things can indicate that they are not accepting the transition well. Disengagement, which employees can become silent, avoid engaging with the transition effort, ignore communications altogether, appear indifferent, and then eventually just end up harboring some low morale and a bad attitude, which can end up leading to employees quitting, which we don't want. Work impact could be affected, which could look like reduced productivity, tardiness, or absenteeism altogether, increased sick leave, and then an increased volume of mistakes in work that is not typical. So if an employee just doesn't care anymore, they're more likely to let things fall through the cracks, and mistakes can be made. Acting out is a little bit more of an obvious form, depending on the personality type. Not all people are like this, but employees can potentially exhibit conflict, arguments, aggressive or passive aggressive behavior towards others. And then just general negativity, rumors, gossip, complaining, focusing on problems, celebrating failure. You know, if something happens during the transition, and which we're, you know, failure is inevitable here and there. So if something happens, someone may be like, "Oh, I knew that was going to happen," or "I knew that wasn't going to work," or something like that could be an indication of celebrating failure. Or like an "I told you so" kind of attitude. Avoidance, which would be just ignoring the change, reverting to old behaviors, and creating workarounds to the new process. Building barriers would be making excuses, counter approaches, recruiting dissenters, other people, you know, to kind of building a coalition of people who are against it, and a breakdown in trust of leadership. And then a controlling behavior could look like asking lots of combative questions or attempting to influence outcomes in a way that they are trying to control a narrative, and then defending the current state of things. So some groups who are most likely to resist Agile. The people who are most likely to do this are those whose work routines are most likely to be impacted the most. So project managers, this is a highly resistant group. The Agile development process obviously has a large and direct change impact on the way that they are used to operating and reporting out on project process. So project managers often have the responsibility to report up, and this can definitely change a lot, change the way that they do that, and they may think that it may look like the team is not as productive, where in reality we know that's not true. So the technical and IT employees are likely to resist in some way, due to the direct impact on their day-to-day development work. Middle managers are likely to resist due to a lack of understanding how Agile principles will directly affect their teams. So if they're not fully informed, and they get questions from their team, and they don't know how to answer those questions, that may kind of cause a little bit of a friction there, and they may resist the change as well. Sales and business teams are often not directly involved in Agile business processes, and they're mostly not involved at all in the decision to adopt Agile because they're not involved in the kind of nitty-gritty of doing it. However, the change in product delivery that comes with Agile as opposed to waterfall can have a direct effect on the way that they conduct their jobs. So they may have some resistance here as well. And then really any group who is likely to experience a role change, this is arguably everybody, right? So anyone who's involved in some degree is likely to resist just a little bit or be a little bit uncomfortable. So addressing resistance, it can and should be done in a variety of different ways. Communication, this is an obvious one, but communicating more frequently. Primarily, communication efforts should be focused in 3 different specific areas and at different times based on what stage of the Agile transformation we're in. But convincing people about the benefits of Agile, this is going to want to be done up front, ensuring everybody understands what their new roles are, and then also dispelling any fears that arise. Communicating the value of Agile, recommunicating the advantages of Agile development, and reinforcing the business reasons for the change by the sponsor and by the Agile experts should be done throughout the entire transition and really beyond the transition. That really should never stop. And creating opportunities for additional training and coaching, providing and empowering employees to take advantage of these training resources will show them that you're valuing their continuing education as well as investing their growth as individuals. So getting this certification and training will ultimately help the company, but that's something that your employees can take with them as well. So that really shows an investment in them. And then increasing sponsor effectiveness and engagement. This, I've said this, 4 or 5 times at this point, but this can be done with direct coaching to the sponsor by the change management team. It's crucial. Onboarding with the Agile methodology is so much easier and so much more seamless when employees see executives within their organization actively participating and supporting the transition to Agile. So, effective and enthusiastic sponsorship just sets the tone for the entire Agile transformation, and positive camaraderie and enthusiasm just give people the permission to join in. So it's really an attitude of, no matter what your position is in this company, we are all in this together. All right. So once the Agile transition's been implemented and the team is successfully operating under Agile themes and principles and delivering products and deliverables, sustaining the change will also require ongoing support and work. So if anyone's heard of the storming, forming, norming, performing model, this is the norming stage, and it's arguably one of the very most important. So if support and engagement falters here, which sometimes it does, the Agile transformation, okay, it's done, we're operating under Agile, and then sponsorship can kind of fall off a little bit. So if that happens, employees are likely to kind of revert back to the old ways, and waterfall themes can start to kind of creep back into work streams here. So several ways to aid in sustaining the transformation. Again, continuously communicate about the value. This can be done through success stories, actionable feedback, and definitely celebrating wins early and often. So that is crucial for positive reinforcement. Your employees are already starting to do things completely different than what they're used to. At the same time that we want to allow for mistakes to be made, we want to celebrate wins and make that positive reinforcement. And then continuous training and continuing education, apart from the certifications, but this can be done by just designating specific Agile coaches that can work with either individuals like product owners to get them and keep them on board. Continuous learning can also be achieved through internal communities of practice or regular meetings geared towards addressing lessons learned, determining what additional work needs to be done to continuously improve the process. Maintain that stable and ongoing sponsor engagement. And then another thing to consider here, it may not be immediately possible, but consider requiring the Agile approach to be applied throughout the entire organization. So identifying Agile as an organizational norm will instill those core principles within everybody at the organization. And kind of deter from reverting back to old ways. Okay, so the success of an Agile transformation is determined by the organization's ability to engage their people sufficiently to successfully transition their employees to using Agile and ultimately extracting investment value from that transition. So it's closing the gap between successfully implementing the new process and then sustaining it. So ultimately, the success is measured if the organization and the people within it are able to successfully make that permanent shift to Agile and mindset while improving business processes. And also a key thing here is maintaining high employee morale and satisfaction, because we've gotten our employees to make this huge change, and so now we really want them to be happy and to stay. So introducing Agile is obviously a huge change that can be disruptive to an entire organization. If a change management plan is not employed from the start, it can really set up the transition for failure. So for the greatest chances of Agile transformation success, we want to make sure to include the elements of an active and enthusiastic change sponsor, bringing in experts in Agile practices, engaging employees early and often to demonstrate that the organization values them, values their input, promoting psychological safety and allowing room for mistakes to be made, equipping employees with adequate and continuous training, constant communication and transparency, and then creating space for feedback loops in order to continuously improve. All right. That is it. So I thank you everybody. I wanted to just kind of open it up here. Thanks for your time and attention. Just wanted to see if anybody had any questions, or I also would love to just to have this as like a discussion time about Agile transformations that you all have been a part of, any lessons learned or anything else anybody else wants to share.